Pump it like bench press, we leave you defenseless. My man's got some tools, I ain't talking about wrenches. We blaze every part of your human anatomy.
Cordae Amari Dunstan, aka YBN Cordae, or simply Cordae, born August 26, 1997. Today's feature in 2018 was supposed to be the J. Cole of the next generation, but 5 years later, and that couldn't be further from the truth. First of all, J. Cole is still one of rap's most relevant characters, and his skill level is at its peak in respect overall, from his peers to his fans. So asking for a new J. Cole so soon is typical of society having something great but always looking for what's the next great thing they can indulge in. In hip-hop, ever since the last golden era of rappers, it's like fans have been waiting on and embracing anything that looks and sounds close to traditional rap or rappers. So when they see a Joey Badass or Cordae, they become so excited about having some semblance of that old thing, they overblow the artists and set them up to fail when the hype wears off. That's what Cordae has always seemed to me. A likable guy, a good guy that raps well enough and traditional enough, not to mention being in the same highly skilled suburban kid with North Carolina roots vein as J. Cole, so the comparisons were always going to fly. But please, can we stop those? J. Cole is a one-of-a-kind that had perfect timing and is consistent as they come, still getting better. When I heard Friday Night Lights, I didn't care what else J. Cole ever made. The guy who made that album would forever be a legend to me. Probably one of the best albums that kinda sorta wasn't an album I've ever heard. That and Nas's The Lost Tapes. Cordae never gave me that feeling or anything close to it. I agree that he should be credited for at least trying to rap in the era he came up in, where if it ain't singing, it's non-stop violent, destructive drill music. Outside the skillfully distant comparisons to Cole, Cordae was championed because when YBN was hot in 2017-18, he came along as the only one that could actually rap in the group with bars, well thought out concepts, and delivery. He was also very consistent early on in the amount of appreciated verses and making connections to other artists he did naturally. Cordae had a lot going for himself early in his career, like his debut album being nominated for the Best Rap Album of 2020, an album that sold 25,000 copies first week. Who would have thought just years later Cordae wouldn't have the same juice and excitement about his career, almost irrelevant in 2023. He had the spark you'd want as a new rapper in the game, to where many were calling him the next J. Cole. A compliment not so accurate any longer. What happened? Let's talk about it. Salute to Elijah MC for this request. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth Music. Let's cut it, man. Take a minute to like, subscribe, and comment on who I should do next. Cordae is a rapper and songwriter from Raleigh, North Carolina, before being predominantly raised in the suburb of Suitland, Maryland, where his eyes for hip-hop became opened by the music his father would play around the house. Those rap records became the foundation for who he'd become. By 15 years old, Cordae already knew what he wanted to do with his immediate future, and that's become a rapper. His work ethic matched his desire as he released 3 mixtapes before he even graduated high school. What came next was a disinterest in university, looking for more challenge and a light brighter than the potential of being great in social studies class. He moved to LA and became friends with YBN members Namer and Almighty J after they heard a song of his and invited him around. He adopted their YBN tag and changed his name from Entendre to just YBN Cordae, and things blew up from there. While they had a hit record and the spotlight for next up in the SoundCloud era, they didn't have a serious rapper who could be a serious rap star until Cordae. Stunt number 1, being taken seriously. The thing about YBN period as a group that made their run so short as upcoming rappers was at some point when that SoundCloud mumble rap era was finished and all those kiddie hit songs became old, YBN Namer, Jay, and the rest of the crew had to have serious rap skills to fall back on. The thing about that era is it led right into the drill rap era, where guys like Lil Durk, NBA Youngboy, King Von, and just about every other rapper upped the violence on record and made things a lot more serious to even be called a rapper. In the late 2010s, early 2020s, with social media watching, rappers began getting pressed for real to expose them as not being who they proclaim. Cordae's YBN crew member Almighty J can attest to just that. He was attacked in 2019 in New York, first robbed of his chain, then beaten so badly he left with his face slashed and in need of 300 stitches. He was also stabbed a few times and had a Hennessy bottle broken over his head. It was serious for the crew that rapped violent lyrics but were really just kids from the suburbs who met on a violent video game and thought things were sweet in the real world. The rest of YBN were in no position to get revenge, as really and truly that wasn't who they really are. Cordae fell back and continued to work on music, but his main issue even to this day is whether because his extra youthful, doughboy kid brother look, or his passive personality straight from university and the suburbs of Maryland, his music doesn't have that grown man appeal to it, which hurts every year he ages, but those things don't. Musically though, Cordae was making a push in 2019, becoming a part of the XXL freshman list in July, then releasing his debut album August that year, led by songs like Kung Fu and the Grammy-nominated Bad Idea. His look and personality were one thing, his crew being pressed was another, but when his album came out and didn't perform like some expected, selling just 25,000 first week, it seemed Cordae lost that serious rap threat feel and since then hasn't mended those disconnections between he and clearly the majority of fans. Stunt number 2, album sales. Usually I can understand that album sales has nothing to do with the artist being good or not, and they mean nothing to his career, but in this case, I think they mean everything for Cordae. Before his debut 2019 album, Cordae received much comparisons to J. Cole, and some writers reviewing his album called him the new generation's J. Cole. Doesn't mean talent-wise he's not, even though I couldn't disagree more, but when those numbers came in after album 1's first week, then in 2022 selling even less at 20,000, it certified Cordae likely won't become a huge mainstream star, unlike what J. Cole has been able to do with that style. In my opinion, what hurt the most really was his affiliation at all with the YBN crew, even though being around Namir and Jay is what got Cordae hot in the first place. Who's to say he wouldn't have anyway, but Namir, believe it or not, was on fire at the time, and Jay, up until his robbery, beating, and embarrassment online, was too. Fans urged Cordae to separate himself from YBN, and he did in 2020, announcing it on Twitter. The separation would prove futile because his 2020 album still didn't perform like he had hoped, placing him in a position his next album, if any, on a major label like Atlantic has to be special, or it could be his final mainstream push. Stunt number 3, not really mainstream. Finally, I think fans and of course his label Atlantic would like for Cordae to break through and cross over mainstream, but there's something about his sound, style, writing ability, appearance, and personality that make him not really a mainstream artist in my opinion. Sure, he has some flow, although not a personal indulgence, and he did have opportunity with all the hype from 2019 to 2022. But he's still represented by the bleach blonde mushroom hairstyle he had since coming in the game years later, and that's about it that makes him stand out good or bad, and the music still hasn't produced a Billboard hit song. He dated Japanese tennis star Naomi Osaka for a while, and the two had a child together in July 2023, but rumored to have called it quits months later. So far, it may have been the most mainstream thing he ever did. Musically, Cordae has a style that isn't boring, but also isn't one you would go back and listen to over and over. It's the irony that presents itself in him being called his generation's J. Cole. In Cole's generation, lyrical miracle rappers were actually welcomed, as most of the rappers knew they needed lyrical skill to even be accepted in the rap game, But today, lyrical rappers are all but needed in today's hip-hop landscape. Now it's all about hype and clout, and if you can hold a melody like Rod Wave or not, or if your street presence is one that's respected by the streets and believed by the fans. Cordae does sing from time to time, but nah. He was touted as a mainstream hope for lyrical rappers, but after 2 dud albums sales-wise, mainstream success may not ever come along like expected. All in all, Cordae does have fans that enjoy his music and has 5 million monthly listeners on Spotify and millions of views on YouTube, so he'll be just fine. But for these reasons, his growth was stunted. Salute, much respect. It's your boy JC, Stunted Growth Music, and I'm out.